Hello, it's Abby. I'm here to talk to you today about trees, chord structure, and beat blocks. For this lesson, you will need a chord pack. When I teach my students about chord structure, I always begin by talking about trees. What are the major parts of the tree? We have roots, we have a trunk, and we have the leaves. Without any of these parts, it's really not much of a tree anymore. It would probably die. But the one part that is needed more than anything is the roots. You cannot survive without a root. Chords also have roots. So let's build our first root. This is the note F. Chords are named after the root because it's that important. So this would be called an F chord. But there are two other parts to the tree. So let's find out what those will be. The trunk, the stabilizing part of it, and the middle part of a chord here is the letter A. This is note A, and our top are leaves that help us identify what kind of tree or what kind of chord it is. In this case is C. Now you can also talk to your students about how this is laid out theoretically on a keyboard or a staff, F, A, and C, but I find it's very helpful to begin with basics, color-coded chords. For example, the F chord in the chord pack is blue. So we know that F, A, and C are all similar chord tones. They all belong to the same tree. Now this is where trees and chords vary though. With chords, you don't always have to have the root at the bottom. It can move. A tree who has its roots up above the ground will not survive, but a chord can. Students can rearrange their chord tones to find inversions. Here's a first inversion. The root has moved to the top. Allow students to explore some other ways to change these tree chord tones around, and they will find that there's also a second inversion. Is it still an F chord? Yes, it has the same chord tones, and the root is there, but the root can move. It's fun to experiment with small compositions so that students can understand how the chord changes slightly with the root moving. Now, another way to look at chords is thinking linear versus a stacked chord. What we have done is stack a chord much like a tree. We have stacked it up. Of course, you can always add more tones to this and you can stack an enormous chord. Jazz chords have many different parts to them. However, for this, we're going to keep it simple with our 3 chord tones, and we are going to make some linear harmony. Linear harmony happens in many musics throughout the world, as well as our own Western music, and it looks a little like this. Sometimes we'll call it an arpeggio, but it is still the same chord tones. It's no longer on the downbeat now. It is on every beat. We have a different chord tone. Students can rearrange these two and experiment with how they like it. Do they want the root to happen many times, or do they want the root to only appear certain times? The music has a different feel to it when you do it different ways. Finally, beat blocks can help you talk about chord progressions. Here you see the 12-bar blues represented with chords stacked on the downbeat. Now the first thing we'll do when studying this is we will analyze where do the chords happen. The red chord tones, which is our C chord, happens a lot. We are in the key of C, so it would make sense that we would hear a C chord a lot. We also have our 4 chord, the F chord, and making a special little debut here is our G chord, our 5 chord. So we will identify these, we'll build them, and then the next step is to arpeggiate them or turn them into linear harmony. Now we've done a project using GarageBand where we would notate each one of these chords into GarageBand as a tree, or sometimes we'll call them snowman chords as well because they look like the 3 parts of a snowman. And we'll put in these block chords, these stacked chords. Then another step you could do is to take the bass line, just the root of each chord, and put that into GarageBand as its own track for a bass. The last step we would do is to create this linear harmony by stacking the notes. Students can then turn them around And the notation is on the back so they can input that into GarageBand or whatever notation system you'd like to use. So for a project we took the 12-bar blues and we put in stacked chords as something like a guitar or some sort of rhythm instrument just on the downbeats. We then added the root notes for a bass line, and the final part of the project was to arpeggiate our chords and put those in. Now I have kept it simple with just one note per beat. Just to keep it simple, you could always add another layer with rhythm, however, and just use your rhythm blocks on top. So let's listen to their recording. You could do the same project with really any chord progression or any popular song and create a new section letting students create their own chord progressions with the chord pack.